Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'll be your host, Nick axslav ranish, as we explore strategies and tactics used in Starcraft 2, specifically used by the professionals, and how you can use those tactics at home to improve your game. Coming up today, we're going to go over the Life vs. Polt series from the Major League Gaming Championships at Dallas, the Winter Championships, of course. We're going to look at 3 of the games, Games 1, Games 4, and Game number 5. And at the end of that is going to be the viewer Q&A. So submit any questions you have to me on Twitter at axslav. I'll answer those at the end of the show. They don't have to pertain to this series or this show. They can pertain to yesterday's show, a prior show, or anything you're interested about. Starcraft or life related in general. So ask away on Twitter. Those will all be answered at the end of the show. Now let's get into Life vs. Polt. Game number 1. Game's going to be on Akalon Waste, and a couple things we're going to look at are early Reaper Hellion play. And for you Terrans out there, what it does for you and some things you have to be careful of when you're executing such an early game play. Some mid-game heavy speedling baneling play from the Zerg side, and how the important things about that style of play of both utilizing it and trying to defend against it. Then we're going to talk about how to deflect late-game Terran pushes. So, jumping into the game, we're going to take a look at this very early over at the 4-minute mark. If you can see, Polt has already proxied barracks. Of course, he got a gas as well. Now, he's not going to be pulling the SCVs, doing any crazy all-in or anything like that. What he is going to do is he's just going to put on some pressure with the Reapers. So, Reapers are coming out here, bunkers going down, trying to basically be as annoying to the Zerg as possible with the Reaper and bunker combination. He's getting a factory behind us. Now, a lot of Terran players will take a couple guys off gas, just enough gas to get Reapers and get the command center a little bit earlier. But Polt's going to delay his expansion to get out some very early Hellions to put on even more pressure as the game goes on. So to bunker into Reapers, the goal here isn't really to kill the Zerg expansion. Reapers aren't going to be able to do that. The goal is to trade very cost efficiently by constantly killing Zerg units and never losing a Reaper. You can take damage, as we can see here, this Reaper's damage, but it'll regenerate fairly quickly. In fact, it's already starting to regenerate. Takes a little more damage, but all that damage will be regenerated as long as the Reaper doesn't actually die. So trying to pick off units wherever he can. If he can do damage to the Queen, he'll do that, then just pull this Reaper back before it dies. Keep building Reapers, because as you get more and more Reapers, you start to be able to just take the Queens on directly. As you can see here, green Reapers are harassing. The red Reaper is inside the bunker waiting to regenerate. The next thing you can see now, it's starting to regenerate going up to orange. So one thing you have to be careful of is as they're doing this, you have your Reapers out, and now pretty soon you're going to start getting those Hellions, of course, expanding behind this late expansion, but it's still there. What you want to do is constantly pick units off, be very careful, because what you're doing is you're going to take map control, and you're going to make a cost-efficient early game trades. If you look at units lost, 0 to 11, 356 resources from the Zerg have already been lost. Terran hasn't lost anything. That's because Reapers basically can't die if they're controlled by someone as good as Polt. So keep constantly harassing, doing damage, salvage the bunker before it dies. Very cost-efficient early game trades, but Reapers and Hellions are both frail. And right now, as soon as your opponent gets speed, all of a sudden you're in danger of starting to potentially lose some Reapers. So you have to be much, much more careful about them. They need constant attention and micro to stay alive. So you're going to start supplementing them with Hellions, and as the game goes on, the goal here is to maintain map control, so the Zerg player has a much harder time taking a third base, and so you continue to make cost-efficient trades. As you can see here, you can keep jumping up and down between the watchtower to make sure those Zerglings cannot catch you. Kill 1 or 2, jump down. Keep doing that. Kill, do some damage, jump down. Eventually, the Zerg has to give up that watchtower, and you pretty much regain that map control, still being very, very cost-efficient. The thing is, though, is while you're doing that, as the game goes on and there's more and more macro back at home you're trying to do, it can be a little bit tricky, and you always have to give constant attention to these forward units. Let's actually back up just a second here. If you overlook for a second, like right here, you're scanning, killing creep tumors. That's always good. But you're busy microing at home, that can be tricky, because if you pop back here, you right-click that Queen, right? That's exactly what Polt did, try to focus down one Queen, which is the right move. But then you look back to go send another SCV to finish building the depot, because the one SCV died. You got to be careful for these front units. Anytime you move your screen away from your harassing units, as a matter of habit, up until you get extremely good, and even if you are extremely good like Polt against someone that's backfire, you should always be retreating with your front force if the screen isn't there. So right now his screen isn't there. He just told him to right-click the Queen, then he went back to do macro, and then because his screen isn't there, the unit's over-chased, and the Zerglings got a really great surround here. And of course, because these units are so frail, with Zerglings surrounding them and the Queens right there as well, very, very pretty much bad because you all go down quickly. And all that great work Polt did in the early game is now neutralized. In fact, he's behind in resources. And remember, he opened with a late natural expansion to do all this harass, which would have been fine when he was 500 resources positive in the resources loss column. But now he's actually negative, and he sacrificed that early economy. So got to be very, very careful when you do these harass map control style because your units are quite frail. So going into the mid-game from a Zerg perspective, one thing we see Life doing is he's going up to 4 hatcheries fairly quickly. Of course, 4 hatcheries, double evolution chambers, 1-1 on the way. He's at lair tech, but he's only going to use that lair tech for continued upgrades and baning speed. Which means that what he's going to do is go very, very heavy speedling baning into mid-game. He can do this. He doesn't need to get his 5th and 6th gases quite as quick. And the advantage of the mass speedling baiting style is that if the Terran does not have siege tanks, right? Which he's doing this style because currently, at least, very few top Terrans utilize siege tanks a lot in their opening. They prefer to make the Widow Mines because you can reactor them out, and the Widow Mines, of course, are more effective against Mutalisks. And also, they look cool. They're a new unit, so people are kind of infatuated with them. At the moment, they often neglect siege tanks early. It's very difficult for a Terran to trade efficiently against, if you look at the unit count, it's pretty much all speedlings and in production tab. It's going to be nothing but speedlings for the next couple minutes. It's hard for the Terran to trade efficiently against this style of army without siege tanks, especially if you can get them boxed back in their base, where they have little room to maneuver, and if they maneuver back too far, in either direction, you can attack their expansions over the 3rd base, or of course the natural mineral line as well could be vulnerable once you break up the ramp. So we're going to go forward here a little bit, and we can see interesting thing about Life is even at the 13-minute mark, right over here, he's at 133 food, and every single bit of that food that's not drones or initial queens is speedlings and banings. So very, very heavy into speedling and baning style, and there's no tanks from Polt. If you had mass Widow Mines, this might not work quite as well, but it's hard to get a ton of Widow Mines out, at least if you're on one factory, so that's a different type of build. And without tanks here, the Widow Mines can do decently, knocking down banings. But unless you get a money shot on all the banes, which in fact he does here, so it's not too bad, there's still more banings. And once the Widow Mines run out of shots, these banings are very, very hard for Marines to deal with. At best, the Marines can back up and then kill them at range. But anytime the Marines back up, either you can corner them so they can't back up, or when they back up, you can expose their SCVs. And even though the Marines are going to trade pretty well massacring the speedlings, so many SCVs are going down that it's a very beneficial style for the Zerg to play early in the game with the mass speedling baiting style. And once you do it once and you say, okay, I know he has mines, I got to be careful with the banings, the next time you go in, as we go forward, what you want to do is you want to send, of course, you got to defend these drops as well, but that's the other great thing about having 4 hatcheries. You can make so many speedlings, especially if you're like Life with insane injects. You can keep your money down making just pure speedlings, and you can use small squads of speedlings to stop the drops with only using limited resources, while the rest of your army can pretty much do that same frontal attacks, keep the Terran basically army and low, as long as they don't have siege tanks. When there's no siege tanks, you can keep doing these type of attacks, make speedlings use up the mines, and then as you come in here, unless you get hit by a really big mine like that, which sometimes happens, you can get great trades. And even if it does happen, the great thing about this combination is that you can rebuild it very fast. You can see here, there's already 60 more speedings, already one more wave coming in here. As soon as he makes a few more banings, he can keep the pressure up. And the goal of this here, he doesn't have to kill Polt, right? He has to defend the drops, which is very important. And what he also needs to do is keep Polt from developing a big army and a big economy. We can see here under income tab, Polt's still only at 48 SCVs. Life's been losing a few as well here. We can see Life's lost 14 or so. We'd like to be a little bit higher because of Polt's great usage of the medevacs and the drops. But the main thing here is if you keep the Terran on low economy, keep them pretty much if you keep them from maxing for as long as possible. When they're going for this 3-base push tactic, like we see Polt doing, the 4th base is kind of late, just cranking out a ton of bio units off of 3 bases, right? We see Flash do this a lot. Ton of bio, Widow Mines off 3 bases and try to push out. The longer you can delay this push, like for example, we've seen Flash, he maxes out 13 minutes and pushes out here. If you can keep the aggression going and prevent them from moving out until their main starts running out, right here we can see Polt's actually already only down to 6 patches in the main, and these 6 patches are disappearing fast. 1 or 2 more mules and you're all going to be gone. The natural is even actually kind of low itself. What you can do is if the longer you delay the push out, the weaker the reinforcements are going to be as they try to push out. So first you do that with banelings and speedlings. If it gets to the point where they have too big of an army to trade very well with speedling and baneling, the mulis can help as well, force them to build missile turrets. That compounds their problem of being able to constantly reinforce their army. Let me just went out here. Constantly able to reinforce the army and push out with reinforcements. So eventually they are going to push out, right? Eventually they're going to make that 3-base push out. They're probably going to try to take a 4th behind it. But the main thing here that's hard for Zerg is these armies, as they grow, it can be very, very tough for Zerg to take them cost efficiently. So what you want to do is delay the push as long as possible, threaten counterattacks, slow them down by either forcing siege modes if they're on tanks or forcing their mines to burrow if they're on just bio and mine, and pay attention to their unit allocation. The advantage Zerg has is their army is very fast. And if the Terran army gets out of position, if they clump up their bio or they leave their mines, you need to be ready to jump on them on a second's notice. If there's no siege tanks, you just have to worry about the mines. So always know where the mines are. If they send out little squads units too far, you can jump on them with your speedlings. Keep producing and wait for the Terran to move out of position because they're going to do it sooner or later. Almost no Terran is always going to be in perfect position. And if they are, it'll slow their push down enough that you can get up to hive tech, hopefully. So you just sit there, be patient. As soon as the Terran doesn't move, like this right here, right, where they're too far away from their mines, that's when, as a Zerg player, it's your job to jump. And instead of going back to defend your natural, you can just defend with a few units, cut them off from your power units. The Widow Mines here, these are the scare units, these 6 Widow Mines. If you can cut the Terran off from these 6 Widow Mines and make sure they can't lure you back over them if they run too far out here, that's when all of a sudden you can win. So yes, you attack from this direction up here, but you also, very important here, make sure the bio can't kite down. If you attack from these 2 ways, yes, you can't get the full surround, but if we think about where's the bio going to go, right? A Terran, if you can get a full surround from all sides, you automatically win, right? Unless they're like 100 feet ahead. A good Terran, probably not going to happen. They're going to know where your army is. But if you can make sure that they kite this way, right, away from the Widow Mines, then you can continue to run them down and trade efficiently with your speedling, speed baneling, and mutilus, because you won't have that problem where if you chase them, all of a sudden you might lose all your banelings to 1 or 2 Widow Mines. And then without the banelings chasing the Marines can devastate your speedling mutilus force. So Life here, what he does is he cuts off the retreat of the bio, forces it to head diagonally up where the Widow Mines can't be very supportive. Now there's a little small squadron here, and that small squadron can try to work the guys back into the Widow Mine lines, but even then, actually, the units just barely miss those Widow Mines. The Widow Mines are still going to be a little bit helpful clearing out some of these reinforcing units, but the Widow Mines are much less effective when they're killing units in isolation than if you can combine their splash damage with the extra firepower of the bio. So always try to cut them off from their supply lines, force them back, and then again you're delaying this scary 3-base push. Now, of course, Polt says, okay, the Widow Mine bio competition isn't working so well. I'm going to add siege tanks. And siege tanks basically make the Terran army hit a point where once they get enough siege tanks, you can't really beat it with speeding, baning, mutilus, because once they get about 6+ siege tanks, unless you catch them out of position, which isn't going to be so easy, they're going to have enough siege tanks where banelings are going to be extremely difficult to get those connections, and without baneling connections, this army can't work. So this is the point where the Zerg player's been going for. Yes, the Terran is going to get this really scary 3-base siege tank bio force up as these siege tanks continue to be produced, but, well, that was actually a really insane tank hit right there. But while the Terran's trying to do that, if we look at this point, the main's mined out. The natural is very close to mined out, and even the 3rd base is actually getting low as well. All you have to do is delay this push as long as possible, and the Terran will eventually mine out. So as the Terran's pushing out across the map here, as a Zerg player, what do? You don't jump right into the siege tanks, but you make sure your creep spread is good enough that the Terran wants to move out slowly. You buy time by counterattacking. First with Mutilus, a surprise increase in the Mutilus count will catch Terran players off guard. Take out reactors. That also impacts their ability to reinforce rapidly. And then all you're doing is you're basically delaying time to get hive tech. Once the Terran gets a lot of siege tanks, this many siege tanks, you do not want to engage them until you get hive tech. So you buy time, you distract them, you pull them in different directions. Eventually, though, they're going to realize what's going on, and they're going to keep trying to push out. And especially with Widow Mines in play, it gets much, much harder to buy time as Terran kind of stabilizes, get missile turrets up everywhere, gets a Widow Mine in their mineral lines to help defend against immediate harass. They're going to start feeling confident enough to start pushing out more aggressively. So we can see here, Terran player starts to push out aggressively, And again, versus this many tanks, the creep forces them to play it slow and leapfrog with siege tanks because the Zerg army can descend on them so fast. And if they're playing it slow and you can't engage this many siege tanks with your Baneling force, you counterattack. You wait until you get the hive tech because all you have to do is buy time. Speeding Baneling, it will attack wherever the tanks aren't. Widow Mines can be annoying, but as long as you can damage their 4th base, because you bought so much time earlier, their economy is going to be basically nothing. You have the natural with a few mineral patches left. Make sure they can't drop mules on a 4th base, and then just defend at home by being annoying with infestors, mulists, wait for those ultras to kick in. So, I mean, this game you can see here, as you fast forward it, with the mulists, infestors, and ultras combination, Polt's going to have a very hard time pushing forward. As he keeps the siege tank spread, he can slowly push forward. But the difference between this game and a lot of games we notice is because Life has made sure that he delayed the push until the main base was mined out, the natural is pretty much mined out, and even if he didn't kill this 3rd base, it would be very close to being mined out, and then make sure to counterattack that 4th with speedlings. Polt's stuck in a situation where if you look at that economy, he can do the slow push to be safe from banelings, but every minute, 2 minute, 3 minute that passes, yes, he might be able to kill one of Life's bases with the siege tanks from slowly pushing it, but Life has bought that time to get the overwhelming hive tech army out, and the Terran is unable to reinforce waves fast enough to make their push go quickly because, of course, he can't afford to lose units, so he has to be exceptionally careful with his play. So looking back on this game 1, Life goes on to win. It should be obvious from this point. Key things here is if you're playing Terran, you open with a late expansion because you get the factory before the command center. Very important that your Reaper Helling opening, you can't lose those units. You have to maintain the map control for as long as possible to slow down the Zerg 3rd base, get cost-efficient trades, but most importantly, keep that map control by not losing those initial units. As it goes on, if you're a Zerg player and you notice your opponent's not getting siege tanks, you don't have to rush up so fast to mulists. Mulists are great against siege tanks. They're not quite as great against Widow Mines. So if your opponent's going Widow Mines, stay on speeding and baning for a little bit longer and try to keep their numbers low, keep the trades going. Because if you can basically delay the game by 5 minutes, make the Terran have at 18 minutes what they should have at 13, you can delay your own build by 5 minutes as well. But what happens is all the mines get lower. As a Zerg player, your 4th and 5th base are faster and you're not dropping mules. So your bases will last longer than a Terran bases. And if you can, the longer you can delay the game, they will starve out before you. So staying on the speeding, baiting, trying to get decent trades is a great way to play Zerg in the mid-game against a Terran who's not using tanks. Once they get up a whole lot of siege tanks, that's when you got to use the counterattacks, buy time to get those hive-tech units out. Once you have Ultras or Broodlords, even a high siege tank count won't be that scary. This wraps up game number 1. I hope you enjoyed that analysis. We'll take a short break and be right on to game number 4.